So global payments is processing billions of dollars in transactions across dozens of markets. At what point did stablecoins move from being an innovation team thing to something the leadership team had to think about?
Sure, it's a great question. I would say there wasn't one definitive or specific point in time, but as you can imagine, as the market capitalization of stablecoins grew, as the number of use cases in payments that they were being applied to grew, there was kind of this transition period of it went from a, to use your words, an innovation to watch to like a leadership topic. I would say that probably started to crystallize in 2022, but probably couldn't put a finer point on it than that. And as we've seen the developments over the time since then, and in particular with some of the regulatory changes in the U.S. and Europe over the past 18 months, it's kind of now gone through that transition and cemented itself as a key leadership topic.
Obviously, you operate across the world, but including Europe and MiCA regulated markets. What does compliance readiness actually look like? What does it look like in practice for you, a company of your size, active in this space? And is there something that we're not talking about when it comes to MiCA?
Sure. So first of all, as a highly regulated payment institution that operates around the world, compliance is front and center to everything we do. And so we've paid very close attention to the evolving regulatory landscape in Europe and other markets. I would say the interesting thing with MiCA is twofold. One is the compliance obligations and what is in scope versus out of scope. Of course, there's some similarity across Europe, but it also depends on where you're operating and where the entity you're working with is domiciled. So there's some nuance in terms of, where you're setting up, where you're providing services that might impact what you need to do from a compliance perspective. But what I would say is more relevant to us as a payments company and is almost like a step higher level is are the stablecoin related services we're providing actually in scope for having a MiCA license as a payments company? Because if you think about it, in Europe right now, you have three different regulatory frameworks. There's the payment institution framework, which is how we are regulated today, generally speaking. There's the electronic money institution framework, which also exists. And then there's the MiCA framework. And so, as a payments company, depending on the exact use case and service you're providing with stablecoins, you may or may not come into scope of MiCA. And so I think this is actually the critical question that most, non-crypto companies like traditional payments companies and fintechs needs to ask themselves is what is the product or service I'm offering? How and where do stablecoins come into that? And how does the intersection of those two things compare with what's in scope to MiCA versus what's in scope for traditional PI or EMI license? And that's what will inform whether or not you need a MiCA license and what elements of it you need to comply with.
And obviously, as a business, you've reinvented yourselves more than once. So, thinking about stablecoins specifically, is this a similar fundamental reimagination, or is it just moving with the times? And what are the differences and similarities, I suppose?
Probably somewhere in between, I would say. I think if you look at global payments, we've gone through a lot of iterations, as you've pointed out, and one of the more recent ones is kind of the embedding of other financial services and software into the payments journey and ecosystem. I would say those are, quite fundamental shifts in how we've gone to market, how we've built products and services. Stablecoins has some elements that are like that to it. Going back to the previous question, there could be potential regulatory differences between using stablecoins versus traditional payment methods. But I would say I view stablecoins as more an additional payment rail and additional currency that we need to support within an existing suite of products and services. So it isn't a quote unquote fundamental shift. It's more like a new capability, a new currency that we need to embed within our existing product and service offerings.
So, thinking about advising acquirers in general, others, perhaps let's say someone with a strong tourism or cross border merchant book, what's the single largest sort of value that stablecoin can offer them and that they should be thinking about and maybe even testing and rolling out in the next 12 months? And what does good look like?
So lots of different use cases in payments for stablecoins, as you can imagine. I would say the one that we are most excited about is using stablecoins for cross-border payouts. So Global Payments has a very large payouts business where we help merchants who are clients of ours pay out third parties around the world. So this could be marketplaces paying out sellers, gig economy companies paying out workers, travel and tourism companies paying out customers around the world for disruptions or compensation, things like that. So we think this use case of having stable coins available as a payment currency to pay out third parties across borders is very interesting. If you think about traditional B2C cross-border payments, traditionally there's a significant foreign exchange component. Traditionally, there's a significant time delay between the sender initiating the disbursement and the receiver receiving the disbursement. I think stablecoin is a way to make one or both of those pieces a bit more efficient, which is quite exciting for businesses that have a significant amount of cross-border payments to third parties.
And when you think about your business model and how it's evolving and how it might have to evolve going forward, how do you think about yourselves in terms of creating a defensible position? What's the most durable competitive advantage that an acquirer could aspire to achieve in this new reality or universe?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say when it comes to stablecoin related services, is it's making it feel like anything else they're doing with you. So even things as simple as the integration, the reporting and reconciliation, the API they use, the way fees are calculated, things like that. Um, our experience, as a multinational global payments company operating across different currencies, geographies, verticals, channels, merchant sizes is the more you can harmonize the experience across all those different pieces, the better the client experience, of course, and the more likely they are to utilize the product and stick with you. So I think to the extent that we can make our stablecoin related services look and feel the same as all of our other services, the more likely it is to be sticky with the client.
Makes sense. Nabil, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you for having me, Christopher.